We're counting down the days until it's finally football time in Tennessee. Can't wait for that. Our friend Bob Kesling is here, the voice of the Vols, and we say, Bob Kesling, good morning.
Morning, Chip. Good to see you, and I like the tie you've got on. So you're now don't peak too soon. We still got a few days left before kickoff, but we're all getting excited. I know.
I'll tell you, Bob, I've got an assortment of these volunteer orange and white ties, and they will be worn liberally all season long. I want to start off asking you a couple of questions about what you think. I mean, obviously, when you and I were talking a year ago, no one had any idea something like this was going to be popping up. COVID has changed everything in the world of sports and other forms of entertainment. But as it pertains to the Vols in particular, you think this is going to be a tough title fight this year since it's an all SEC conference kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. When you go from playing 8 conference games, which all the coaches said was a juggernaut, and suddenly you add 2 more, there's no weekends off. You've got to play every single game. Every game's important. It's not only important for the players, I think it's important for the fans, because now this is, you don't have to worry about those, kind of bye games is what they call them. Now every game's important. If you want to make the college football playoffs, you've got to win these games. And it'll be a physical toll on these teams because conference games are always different than non-conference games just because of the rivalries and the physicalness of it. So, yeah, you got to be ready to play every week.
Is the bench strength and the bench depth going to be maybe a bigger factor this year as opposed to years past because of COVID and because it's a tougher schedule? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think one thing that you got to take into account, you might have a situation this year on Wednesday, you find out that your strong safety is quarantined. So who is there to back him up? You might find out your starting quarterback can't go on Friday because of a test. So you better have somebody ready to go. Somebody said when you have all your quarterbacks in one room in their meeting rooms, you better have somebody, a wide receiver that knows how to play quarterback, because all those guys might be quarantined. Who knows? So that's the things, and you hit on it, Chip. I think you've got to have depth because you don't know who's going to be there really from Saturday to Saturday, from practice to practice right now.
And the crowd's always a factor at any sporting event. Personally, to me, it seems like it's even more of a huge deal at a football game, and especially at a Tennessee football game. How do you think that's going to affect the team? There's not going to be as much crowd noise, even though the folks that are there are going to be certainly raising a lot of hullabaloo. But how's that going to come into play, both from the coaching side of things and the playing side of things?
Well, the one thing, there won't be as much noise, you wouldn't think, so the communication will be easier. When you play at Neyland Stadium, the crowd gets excited when the other team has the ball because they want to make noise to disrupt them. So sometimes it's hard to communicate on defense. Well, that won't be the problem this year. There'll be plenty of you won't have that much problems communicating, I don't think, on either side of the ball. The one thing that I think that Major League Baseball players have talked about is, there are no crowds for any Major League Baseball games.
Right.
And you do need a little bit of an adrenaline rush from the crowd, either they're for or against you, that motivates you. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these young men get themselves psyched up with nobody there to pump them up, to get them ready to go. So I think that's a factor, Chip.
I think it will be too, and I'm anxious to see the first game to see how that does come out on either, or should I say on both sides of the ball. All right, you personally, you're a lifelong broadcaster. How is this affecting you and your broadcast team? And I mean the guys in the booth, the guys that take everything and get it set up so you can do your job. And you guys are broadcasting and doing your job in a heck of a lot smaller environment than a 100-yard playing field.
Yeah, that's true. Chip, we really don't know. We still haven't gotten any guidelines or any outlines from the SEC office about, can we travel? How many guys can we have in a booth? What's the separation? We're planning at Neyland Stadium that all the broadcast teams, television and radio, will be able to be there. But we've also got plexiglass available that you can slide that in between your spotter and your stat guy and your color guy. And however you want to configure the booth, you're going to have plexiglass there to make sure that you're safe. But it's obviously going to be different and strange, and we don't really know what it's going to look like. I know that we can't go down to the locker room after the game, so all our post-game is going to have to be done on a Zoom or some kind of hookup that we haven't really found out how we're going to do that yet. So it's all different. But I think the one thing that we're all willing to make sacrifices because we want to play. I think from the players, they've made sacrifices. For the broadcasters, the administrators, everybody has made sacrifices to make sure we can get on the field in a couple of days, and it looks like we're headed that way.
And I know you guys have been holding your breath for weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, to find out if we were even going to have a season. Must have been a big sigh of relief when you found out, yeah, we are. Abbreviated, but indeed we are.
Well, I think, from the start, and we talked before about this, Chip, I think Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, has been steadfast in his message that we're going to play football. We're going to figure this out. We're going to be patient. We're not going to make snap judgments. We're going to look at the science. We're going to look at the facts, but we're going to play football. And most of the schools have done a pretty good job of making sure that the guys know what they're supposed to do. Now, there have been some outbreaks. There have been outbreaks at Tennessee. There have been outbreaks at Alabama. There have been outbreaks at other schools, because I think even the young people now are starting to figure out this is pretty serious. And if we want to go to school, if we want to do the things, we want to live a normal life, we've got to make some sacrifices too. So, but I think the players have done that. And I think that Tennessee and the rest of the schools have done a really good job to get us this far. We still got to get to the starting gate and get this thing started, though.
One final question, and just to be clear on this, what happens if one of you or a member of your broadcast team, one of the players or one of the coaches comes down with COVID? I know you guys are doing the continued accelerating COVID testing. What happens if Coach Pruitt comes down with it 2 or 3 days before game time? He's out.
I guess he'll be quarantined at home and calling a game via his cell phone. I don't know how any of that's going to work, but the rules are pretty strict. That if you're positive or you come in contact, there's a protocol in place. So that's a bridge I hope none of us have to cross, but we better be ready for it, because that could happen. So hopefully we'll all stay healthy and safe and be able to play. But you got to have Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D ready to go.
Well, that's one thing that the Tennessee coaching staff has always been very strong on. You got a plan, you have a backup, and another backup. All right, very quickly, Tennessee's first game is
coming up against South Carolina, and that'll be on the 26th in Columbia. So they'll start on the road. And, I think one thing about all of this, none of their practice schedules have been disrupted. They haven't been able to scrimmage as much as they want. So some of these early games, and I think we've already seen some of the early games, are going to look a little rugged. I mean, because these teams haven't had the scrimmaging and all the 11-on-11 work that you want to do because of the injury. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right, Bob, I'll tell you what. If you're not doing anything, why don't you come join us back here tomorrow morning, same show, same time. I got a few more questions I'd like to ask you if we could talk you into it.
That'd be great, Chip. Thanks.
Make that Friday morning. I'm sorry. The days get all mixed up, especially after a Labor Day. Bob Kesling, always a pleasure, the consummate professional broadcaster in the voice of the Tennessee Vols. Bob, we'll talk to you here in a couple of days. Jess and I will see the rest of you tomorrow morning, starting at 10.